Reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
Black Desert Online. Now, this is, at first glance, would be a very similar game to Blade and Soul. It also comes from Korea, having its North American launch. And while aesthetics are similar, Black Desert Online is definitely a more realistic game. It is a very, 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 very different game. And I'm going to start this off by saying this is a fantastic, amazing game that has so many elements to it that are incredibly well done. I really haven't seen this much complexity to a game in a very, very long time. And at the same time, once I'm done this review, I am never, ever going to play it again. And it's really weird to say that this is one of the best games that I've played in a while at the same time saying that I'm never going to play this game after I'm done the review. Mm-hmm. But really what it comes down to is that complexity that I was talking about. First of all, let's start with the character classes. Very generic classes there. The combat, once you do get into combat, is very fluid. Combo system style stuff. I like the fact that you would use different combinations of key presses, both directions and buttons, and mouse keys to get your different attacks. So it felt very much pulling on like a fighter game sort of inspiration for the combat, and that kept me very entertained as I was going through the combat. And there's a lot of combat, so you be prepared to use all those skills a lot of the time. The story quests were good as I went through it, but really quite soon, maybe once I got up to about level 10 or so even, I started to dig into some of the complex systems of the game. The skill system is very, very broad. There are tons of skills that you can choose from, way more than you will most likely use in a single playthrough, and it's a great breadth of skills that you can choose from. It's quite overwhelming to have that variety and that amount of choice. Thankfully, the game does a pretty good job of describing all of the skills, what they do, and how to pick them. And there's some mechanics in place if you want to switch things up for some in-game currency, which is really, really nice to see. But it is a little bit daunting as you go in and see just the absolute number of choices that you have, even just in your character skills.
And that's an interesting switch, too, because we've seen in a lot of games that have been released recently, or a lot of MMOs, that skill selection has been not much more than could possibly be bound to the 1 through 10 keys. Or, I mean, a lot of MMOs are even set up, I mean, not necessarily gamepad friendly, but at least technically possible on a gamepad. We haven't seen for a long time games that would fill 3 or 4 bars worth of abilities in order to have everything available to you.
Well, this doesn't do that. You have a great breadth of skills, but you don't use them all at the same time. It is limited to what we've got now, the 1 through 10 keys, or 1 through equal keys. So you've got choice, but you don't use everything all at once. And that's where I got a little bit hesitant because I didn't want to pick the wrong thing. But thankfully, like I said, there's mechanics in game to change that up. Now, I do have to mention the crafting system, housing system, the trade system. If you never want to fight in this game and you just want to be a crafter, trader, a real estate agent, a entrepreneur, whatever you want to be that is non-combat related, you are going to have your fill. There are tons of ways in which you can keep yourself busy. Now, I'm just going to explain one little thing about the crafting, and this will give you an idea of how complex the system is. So let's say that I wanted to farm. I wanted to have some farming as part of my gathering resources and for all the stuff that I wanted to do. I wanted to cook stuff in the end, so I needed to farm. And there's a wheat field, but I've got to go out to that wheat field, and I have to check out the node manager that's there, and I have to select one of the workers that I get, and you get workers throughout the game. Excuse me. And you can then assign them to that particular wheat field. Then they will gather stuff from there. It will end up going into your warehouse, which then you can use to make things, but you can only use the things in the warehouse in the city that you're currently in. But you can set up trade routes where your goods can be moved from city to city, and then you can have access to them in a few different places. And that's just to get the wheat. Then you got to do something with it. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the crafting system because I think it'll just sort of bog down. Needless to say, it is very well built, in my opinion. It's very well built, but it is incredibly complex, and that's not necessarily something that I love. I've mentioned several times in the past that I really like playing games. I don't necessarily like to live in a virtual world.
Well, and that's an interesting distinction to make, too, because I'd bet $1 that not all of our listeners are actually in that boat. I think everybody enjoys a fun game and everything like that. But some people do they want to actually sit back and they want to play a game and do everything in that game and squeeze every last bit of everything out of that one particular game and then move on to the next one, or maybe even not move on to the next one in the case of the people that are probably still playing Lotro, for example, and nothing else.
And that's why I wanted to make sure off the very beginning that I mentioned how highly I think of this game. And it's a great game, but it's not a great game for me. And it might not be a great game for a lot of our listeners, but it will probably be a great game for a great majority of them. The other thing to think about is that there is going to be a ton of world PvP in this game. There is guild controls of all sorts of different parts of the map, and you can control it, and that will give some bonuses to your guild and resources and stuff like that. So there's benefits for guilds controlling different areas of the map, and then guilds will fight over those things. So this is going to be, in the end, a very PvP-heavy game, and the PvE aspect of it is quite light. So if you're looking for just a PvE experience, this is not the game for you. This is definitely going to have some world PvP. You need to get yourself a good guild to succeed and to experience this game the best that you can. And in that case, the guild tools are fairly good. It's expensive. The guild contract is really weird. It almost looks like a lawyer wrote the in-game guild contract. It's quite interesting to see that. So for any of you who are considering this game, it is buy to play. So you do have an initial purchase to look at getting into the game. The other thing that I want to mention is that there are some items in the store that do give your character significant advantages. And so you have to be careful about that. And the last thing that I want to mention is that the best looking gear in the game, and this matters to me, who's a vain SOB, is only available through the store. There are some games like Guild Wars 2 that do great outfits in the store, but there are still really killer sets of armor in the game that you can earn. For example, the Cathedral of Flame stuff in Guild Wars 2. I still rock that on my warrior because it looks so freaking awesome with the flames coming off of it, like the lava light sort of stuff. Yeah. That's really, really cool. And I actually like that a lot better than a lot of the outfits in the store. But with Black Desert Online, unfortunately, most of what I would consider the great looking armor sets are in the store, and everything else kind of looks boring, which is unfortunate. And I've done some research for stuff that I could find online about some of the higher level sets, and that does seem to be a concern of the community.
Yeah. And a thing to keep in mind, too, is that that's a concern that comes up for a lot of games. And the trend usually is that if there's interesting stuff to be added to the game later, like you can hope that maybe they'll add more interesting looking raid gear or skins through raids or dungeons or whatever that you can earn in game. Far more often those skins are added to the in-game store, or that seems to be the trend that I've been picking up on.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a world to live in, I think this is a well fleshed out, incredibly immersive world with some well-built game systems that do nothing but enhance the game. So if that's what you're looking for, I don't think you can do wrong with Black Desert Online. This does things like what ArcAge did and some other games and just does it way better. So if that's for you, go check it out. If, like me, however, you like to just play a game and not live in a world, you might want to give this one a pass. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Don't forget to check out all the other podcasts at MMOReporter.com or by clicking on any of the links here. And please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMOReporter. Thanks, everyone, and see you in game.